Some of the most familiar British soft drinks from the 1960s did not just fade away, they disappeared from shelves, were renamed, or got quietly absorbed into bigger brands, leaving only labels, faded advertisements, and collector memories behind. In the 1960s, the UK soft drink aisle looked very different from today. Local bottlers still mattered a lot, supermarket-owned label drinks were not yet the giant force they later became, and a lot of people bought fizzy drinks based on regional loyalty, not global branding. That is why this list is not just about nostalgia. It is about how the British market changed, and how some drinks that once felt ordinary slowly became impossible to find. One of the clearest examples is Schweppes Bitter Orange. Schweppes built its reputation on adult-style mixers and sophisticated citrus drinks, but products like this were part of a wider era when bitter, sharp, and slightly more complex flavors had a real place on British shelves. Today, the soft drink market tends to favor brighter, sweeter, more familiar profiles, especially in mainstream supermarket aisles. So when a drink like Schweppes Bitter Orange disappears, it is not only a product loss, it is a sign that taste itself has shifted. Another vanished name that fits this pattern is Corona, a brand many people now associate with beer, but which also appears in discussions of discontinued soft drinks in the UK context. Old British drink brands often had a much more local identity than modern global soft drinks, and many were tied to specific bottlers, wholesalers, or regional habits. Once distribution changed, those brands often lost the shelf space that kept them alive. Then there is Cidrax, a drink that sounds almost like it belongs in a museum label. It reflects a period when cider-style, fruit-based, and lightly sparkling drinks were treated as distinct grocery staples rather than niche nostalgia items. That category did not vanish overnight, but many of the old names did, either because the market consolidated or because modern branding made the original identity seem unnecessary. White's lemonade variants tell a different story. White's itself is still a recognizable British name, but older versions and flavors have not all survived in the form people remember. That is a key theme in this story, a brand can remain while the exact drink disappears. For viewers, that creates a strange effect where the name feels familiar, but the product they remember is gone. A more playful example is Panda Pops, which many Britons remember not as a premium drink, but as a loud, cheap, highly visible part of childhood drink culture. It belonged to a more colorful era of soft drinks, when budget fizzy drinks could have strong identity and strong packaging even if they were not positioned as healthy or premium. Over time, that kind of product was squeezed by bigger brands, changing tastes, and more polished supermarket competition. If you want a drink that shows how long a brand can live before eventually disappearing as a standalone identity, Lilt is a perfect case. It was long associated with pineapple and grapefruit, tropical branding, and a very specific British memory of summer drinks. But in 2023, Lilt ceased to exist as its own brand and was folded into Fanta Pineapple and Grapefruit. That matters because it proves a product can vanish even when the flavor survives. That same logic applies to older drinks that may not be remembered by every viewer but still belong to the lost soft drink landscape, Quattro, Tab, and various short-lived citrus or bitter drinks that were once easy to find and later became rare or extinct. Tab, for example, became famous for a very specific diet drink identity before fading from the mainstream conversation. Quattro is another reminder that drinks often disappear not because people hated them, but because brands moved on, campaigns ended, and shelf space became more valuable elsewhere. Some viewers will notice that not every one of these names is strictly a 1960s launch. That is fair, and it is exactly why this topic works best as a cultural time capsule rather than a strict historical checklist. When people talk about drinks from the 1960s, they often mean the drinks that feel tied to that period in British memory, even if some launched slightly earlier or later. In other words, the era is doing as much work as the date. The real story here is not just disappearance. It is consolidation. British soft drinks moved from a landscape of regional favorites and quirky flavors into one dominated by large groups, simplified product ranges, and brand families that can survive by renaming instead of reinventing. That is why a drink can seem gone, but still live on as a flavor inside something else, or as a label remembered by only the oldest shoppers. And that raises the most interesting question: when a drink disappears, what exactly did we lose? The taste, the branding, or the feeling attached to it? That is what makes old British soft drinks so powerful in memory, because they are never just about sugar and fizz, they are about a specific moment in shopping history. So when you look back at these vanished British drinks, you are really looking at how the supermarket itself changed. The shelf became more global, more standardized, and more efficient, but also less weird, less local, and less personal. That is why a simple bottle can become a time capsule. And that is why so many people still remember these lost soft drinks as if they disappeared yesterday. Which of these vanished drinks do you still remember seeing in UK shops? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe for more investigative videos about supermarket products, food, brands, and the real story behind what we buy.